Hello, Dublin. Okay, the piece I'm going to read for you tonight is called The Hemorrhaging Humorist. After a disastrous attempt to run a schizophrenic restaurant, by day one thing, by night another, which saw me consume bottles of champagne and blue Bombay gin with alacrity and some considerable dexterity, I hosted a millennium ball that would put a Roman orgy and the worst displays of Caligula in the halfpenny place. It began with a drunken priest skidding on a vol-au-vent and bringing an 8-foot mirror of canapes down on top of himself, and ended in a shirtless brawl in the bullring. I put my head in my hands and surveyed the bulging black bag of invoices and reconsidered. I had already tried coffee shop, wine bar, music venue, intimate bistro, fine dining, and ultimately potluck. With hindsight, it would have been easier to dispense with the middleman and just throw the money over the quay. I may as well have been nailing jelly to a tree. I put the white on the window and repaired to an adjacent hotel with the Crossair and an espresso to contemplate my next career choice when my phone rang. "Can you join a ship this evening as a chef? Says a man. "Begobbin I can," says I. This is when I still used to say yes to life. Nowadays I am more likely to respond, hell no, or not in these heels. I packed an overnight bag and a book and took a train to the harbour. In the breeze-blocked hallway of the Irish Ferries offices, I follow this suited man down a warren of carpeted hallways as he hands me out sets of whites and checks. "We thought you were a man," says he, as he hands me the giant XXL jackets and pants. I am loving the neckerchiefs and aprons. The shoes, not so much. They are white and steel-capped and size 9. I can get into a 3 if I have to. "You can swap on board," he says with a hopeful smile, and I believed him. He leads me aboard like a lamb to the slaughter. A man in a high-vis shouting into a walkie-talkie nods me over to the lift, and I can smell petrol and metal and feel the power of the sea beneath me, the giant ship rocking and suckling at the quay wall. I arrive out into the passenger entrance on deck 7, and a curious steward takes me to my cabin and tells me to come back downstairs when I am boxed off. I stare around the cabin. Twin pink bunks, pink blankets, pink sheets. It is 2001, but this is not a space odyssey. I put on the clothes. I am in a lather from rolling up things and rolling down things. The sleeves, the legs, the sleeves. The shoes are massive. There is no way on God's little green appled earth they will stay on these feet. I undress again, redress in mufti, and march around the ship looking for the duty-free shop to buy socks. £15 sterling on my visa later, I have purchased and donned 3 pairs of Guinness socks, the ones only ever purchased by second-generation septic tanks wearing mustard leisure suits. They were beside the shillelaghs and the cans of Irish air. I pressed a few hundred pens that played when Irish eyes are smiling, just for fun. The blonde at the desk looks at me in disbelief. She thinks I am a passenger who has not disembarked, or a maniac, or both. "Just think what 2 can do," I proclaim and scooch them on and walk up the stairs. At reception, I am handed a giant white hat that makes me look like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and I try to restrain my blonde curls under it. I look like the bastard love child of Betty Davis and the Michelin Man. Ships are bizarre, demented places. They're like floating hotels that serve gypsy weddings all day. They are crewed by wildly disparate men who are used to packing a bag and heading to Africa following a phone call. One joined a ship on a horse at Dublin port and slapped its arse and sent it off. One had an arm wrenched off in a collision with a jinxie bow door. They are hard as nails and unshockable. They shave each other's eyebrows off when they are jarred and lock each other in with sweeping brushes when they are on watch. If 1,000 people drive on board, they are with you all day, every day, and demand to be fed and watered. They can't just wander off and have a walk or a bag of chips. You are either turned in or turned to. Turned in is turned to the wall for a kip, and turned to is shoulders to the wheel. There is never a time when you can march down a crew alley, one actually nicknamed Sheriff Street for the amount of contraband that passed in one door and out another, without being told to whisht 1,000 times. Big Mick is turned in, they'll roar at you. Bernard is on splits. Paddy's on watch, Ronnie's on the wheel. The only time the whole ship's company is present and correct, from the old man to the galley boy's cat and the ship's Mary, is when there is a fire drill happening. I walked into it. 400 eyes saw me framed at the top of the stairs, looking like a miniature Krusty the Clown via Popeye, my oversized jacket rolled up, the legs of the navy checks folded up 1,000 times, at half-mast, the giant white clown shoes, the toucans on the socks. There was a split second of silence and then a wave of laughter. The man who was lecturing about the marine evacuation system stops talking about inflation systems and pressure gauges and stares at me. I could not be more purple. The irony of this is that it would be me, despite having no sea survival cert or any ability to swim, who would inflate the massive MES for the Board of Trade and be the first one down it. There is so much blood rushing around my body, I feel faint and can hear a roaring in my ears. The crew are motley and varied and from all corners of the world, but the humour here is all Dublin. It is savage. "Oh, missus, your hair is only bleeding massive," shouts up a chef the same size as me, but from the safety of a uniform that fits. There is nothing uniform about me. An hour later we are sailing away from the quay wall into the teeth of a gale that the captain calls a little bit of weather. I am skidding around the galley trying to remember which hot box is mine and how I keep a tsunami of 600 eggs from slipping out of a fryer built like a coffin when she rolls again. The shoes are a distinct hindrance. I am the only female in the galley. I survived the seasickness by eating tiny cubes of chilled melon. In the morning I crawled into the small pink bunk and slept. In the night I did it again. I stayed on board for a week and had to take a ship-to-shore call from home as nobody knew where I was. I only knew where I was by looking out the portholes, the Bailey and the Stack, the Heads, the Tusker. After a number of months I changed watch, trips, block, the colour of my hair and title. I worked in every area of the ship. I loaded stores and learned about Man United from a storeman flying around the bowels of the ship on a trolley. I drank strong coffee in the engine room with the beardy boys, signed articles to consent to be transported and given enough fruit not to get rickets, carted linen to cabins, brought steaks to tables of toothless Welsh truck drivers, poured pints for travellers at wakes and then hid behind the grating as the bottles flew, cleaned skid marks off the backs of jacks, pulled tomato skins from sinks, floated and noted and stood like a relic of our decency in the captain's mess, awaiting instruction. My hands folded behind my back, my waistcoat buttoned. I watched a mate D so drunk he waited at a table in his underpants with his trousers folded across his arms like a tea towel. I shaved a man's head to fix the mess the boys had inflicted on him after he came aboard to say hello to his brother and was passed out at the wrong lighthouse when we docked. I lived in fear of a baby built like a tank who wore only a heavy gold chain and a heavier nappy and ran amok in the duty-free, smashing perfume and eating Toblerones. I held hands with a stranger as we lost power in a perfect storm and the waves broke over the bridge and the tug chains snapped. It is because of this and my baptism of fire on board that I could spot the new man at 1,000 paces. He had a head like Hollyhead, as long as a wet weekend in a caravan in Carnsore. He had the face of the man from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he was as long as a Kardashian at a mirror. The only thing missing from his cartoon face was a punchline. He stood 6'6" at the desk and signed in with the crew. I saw the tips of the giant white shoes sticking out the top of his tartan hold-all. It was ironic that he was the clown. He had the saddest face I ever saw. Every day he dressed in his cabin and made his features different with makeup and lipstick, drawing on a smile, presenting himself to the world and the children he was paid to please. He blew up balloons and fell over and took pies in the face, and all the time when I passed him, I could feel it. The palpable sense of otherness from him, the loneliness, a feeling of being caught adrift, loosened, all at sea. All at sea. I watched him sit alone at the table staring out at the gunmetal waves while his meal cooled in front of him. He was polite with a refined accent and a mild stoic air. I tried to include him or engage, but I was too busy drawing on my own face and presenting myself to the world. Chuck Palahniuk once said, "When somebody's blood is lapping at your feet, you will step back." We only noticed he was missing when the children went berserk and ran riot and somebody had to be paged to hoover up the popcorn and wipe down the bulkheads. I was on cabin accommodation that week, which meant I could wear a t-shirt and not have to deal with the general nonsense of the general public. Hiding below stairs, if you will. "That bleeding clown is missing and the place is in a jocker," says the small chef when I walk through the crew galley, dragging a gash bag after sooging a cabin. I knew where the bleeding clown was. He had a laminate hanging on his door saying, "Please do not disturb," or he would have been woken every time we passed a lighthouse, which was a lot. I walked to his cabin and knocked, no answer. I knocked louder, I called, but the only sound was the roar of the engines and the sea. I took out my passkey and opened the door. The cabin was pink, the entire cabin was pink. Even though I was trying to process what I was looking at, I was simultaneously trying to write it in my head. My eyes scanned the small space, the intrusion, the violation as he laid there, his clothes strewn around the floor, his wallet and papers on the deck, vulnerable, laid bare, the minutiae of a solitary man's existence displayed. I entered his space and stepped through the pink substance and walked to where he lay on his back and cradled his giant head in my hands. Beside me at the bedside was a glass of water with pink gunk in it, like jelly. His teeth on the locker, pink gloop clinging to the shiny white enamel, and on one of his giant white poignant shoes, a trail of mottled crimson slime. It was alien and bizarre. It looked like a giant hand had upended a strawberry trifle all over the cabin. There was a scream from the door, a flurry of faces, then the sound of pounding feet as they ran to get the master-at-arms and the purser. I wondered if he felt the blood roaring in his ears as he bled out. I wondered if he felt his heartbeat in his throat. I wondered how his family would react coming to a port to collect the body of their son. He was going, then gone, but I stayed, frozen in the moment. The next time I looked up, the chief purser was standing at the door, framed with a face like thunder on him. "Michelle," says he, "what have I told you before about the gloves?" Thank you.